What if there was a game with the crisp, fluid movement of Apex Legends, the amazing abilities of League of Legends, the loving characterization of Team Fortress 2, and it didn't reek of sweat, unlike most other games that have the word MOBA in their description? Well, the 100,000 plus players that are online right now would tell you that it's a pretty good game, if it existed. The thing is, Deadlock, the new MOBA third-person shooter, isn't even a game yet. It's just an alpha that is so good it has completely hooked over 150,000 players, and is already getting ranked in top 10 lists. But a month ago, almost no one had even heard of the game, much less played it. So just where did Deadlock come from? Why is it so good? And how is it going to change MOBAs going forward? We'll get into all of that, but first, let's talk about the most basic question. What even is Deadlock? With every genre, there are a few types of games that are released. There are the big budget AAA games that often don't innovate on anything, but just focus on providing a much better and smoother experience than their competitors. There are the indie games, which don't have much funding, but are often much more experimental since they can afford to get things wrong pretty often. And then the last major category is games that stay right in the middle. They receive a lot of funding, but still experiment in the hopes of creating something completely new. That's where Deadlock comes in. Case in point, just look at how different Deadlock looks as compared to other MOBAs. This is what League of Legends, arguably the most famous MOBA in the world, looks like. And at the same time, Deadlock looks something like this. Right from the start, it's easy to see just how big of a difference there is between these two games. While League of Legends has always had cool character designs and unique abilities, it's pretty hard to appreciate that when you're looking at the map from a bird's eye view. But things just don't end there. The easiest way to define Deadlock is to call it a perfect blend of the third-person shooter genre with the MOBA genre. It's being created by Valve, which has a good reputation for creating some amazing games like Team Fortress 2 and Half-Life 2. And I think with Deadlock, they're trying to recreate a lot of the success that those games received. As I showed just a minute ago, the third-person aspect of Deadlock definitely makes it stand out from other MOBAs as it makes you feel like you're in the heat of the action. It also has the added benefit of being easily approachable by people who have never played a MOBA in their entire life, which means that people like Shroud, who have spent all their time grinding out FPS games, can still enjoy the game. But to get people to spend a lot of time with your game, you need to first get them to play it, and that's where Deadlock's genius marketing strategy comes into play. In the past year, so many games have gotten famous through word of mouth alone. One person plays a game, they love it, and tell other people. Those other people then tell even more people. You know how it goes at this point. Power World, Helldivers 2, and Lethal Company all became as famous as they are today because people played the game, enjoyed it, and convinced their friends to play it too. But Deadlock takes it an entire step further. The way this alpha is set up is that it's invite only, which means that if you want to play, then you need to be invited by someone who's already playing. And since playing a competitive MOBA game on your own is not a fun experience, this means that you have every incentive to pretty much hit up everyone on your friends list and convince them to give the game a try. Once they play a few matches and get a feel for how good the game really is, they do the same thing to everyone on their friends list, until the number of people playing Deadlock goes up exponentially, which is exactly what happened. Before the alpha test rolled out, it had a small following of around 2,500 players, which increased to 40,000 once the alpha test started to pick up steam, and then became 170,000 as it exploded in popularity. And most of these players aren't just playing it once and then moving on. In fact, it has a high concurrent player base of over 100,000 players. To give you an idea of how big that is, all of us have heard of Dota 2, which is one of the biggest MOBAs in the world and is ranked number 2 by player base on Steam. It was released all the way back in 2012, and it was a sequel, which meant that it already had a fan base to begin with. But even then, it only got around 100,000 players in its first month, which is right on pace with how Deadlock is going right now. Meaning that as the game continues to get updated and actually gets released, there's a good chance that it'll become one of the staples of the genre. Either way, the amount of players it has received from its marketing strategy is insane. At the same time, Deadlock is making a huge movement on Twitch too. We've discussed pretty often just how big of a role Twitch plays when it comes to spreading games through normal word of mouth, since they can convince their audience of thousands to give the game a try. Many major MOBA players have started to play the game on the side, with some like Average Jonas abandoning games like Valorant entirely and moving to Deadlock instead. Other players such as Shroud, who we discussed recently on this channel, have also made videos where they tried out the game, and till now, most of them have had really positive responses to it. And if you scroll down to the comments, you'll notice that a lot of the people watching also want to play the game, which means by the time it's finally available to the public, the player count is going to rise exponentially. All of this shows that Valve is seriously not messing around when it comes to this game. They've come here to shake up the genre entirely and give something that no game has ever done before, which makes a lot of sense when you look at their past achievements. They've given us banger after banger after banger. From Portal 2 and CSGO to Team Fortress 2 and Left 4 Dead, they've given us a lot of great games over the years. Most of the time, their design philosophy has remained the same: give the players what they want. At this point, they make more than enough money from Steam to keep their business going, which means that they can afford to spend multiple years fine-tuning their games until they are perfect. And all of that leads to the incredible performance of Deadlock that we see today. But we've seen that initial hype doesn't always lead to long-term success. As we saw in the case of multiverses, a lot of people might care about a game, give it a shot when launch day finally rolls around, and then decide that it's not worth to learn an entirely new game when you already have one game you like playing. MOBAs are not a new concept, and neither is the idea of a third-person shooter, with both genres being pretty tough on new competition. Just look at the recently released Concord, which is already shutting down due to almost zero interest in the game. And we also have to talk about the white elephant in the room, which is that I may or may not have lied to you at the start of this video. The thing is, I told you that Deadlock's new gimmick of being a third-person shooter while still being a MOBA is completely new, and hasn't been done by another game. But the fact of the matter is, it has been done by other games. A lot of other games, actually. The actual number is probably in the double digits. So why is everyone, including myself, saying that it looks and feels completely novel? The key thing we need to look at here is execution. For example, take a look at this, one of the earliest games that can be classified as a third-person shooter MOBA. This footage is barely 10 years old and it already looks extremely dated. But if you still think that the differences are just because of cosmetics, then let's talk about Smite 2. All of us have heard of League of Legends considering that it's the biggest MOBA on the planet, but League isn't really available on console, which is where Smite comes into play. It has a lot of similarities to League and is basically the equivalent of League of Legends for console players. And just a couple of weeks ago, it released an alpha version for a Smite 2, which is currently under development and is going to be a MOBA third-person shooter. Coming from one of the giants in this field, you'd expect a lot from it, but all you get is something that looks like this.
It's wild.
Which isn't bad at all, to say the least. And overall, the response of the Smite community has been positive, with most people agreeing that while the game needs a lot of updates before it's fully fleshed out, it's a pretty decent alpha. But as one reviewer put it really eloquently, I haven't spent a single second wishing I wasn't playing Deadlock instead. When you get a feeling of the high-paced combat that you'd expect from a game like Apex mixed in with the depth of MOBAs, it becomes pretty hard to not compare that with every other game you play. And that's exactly what's happening here. A game that hasn't even been released is already changing what players expect when they hear the word MOBA. It's not just the execution that's good though, it's really every aspect of it. If you watch through some videos of big creators playing it, or if you get a chance to play it yourself, then you'll see just how much depth everything has. The character designs are cool, the weapons feel good to the touch, the abilities feel somewhat intuitive, and all of that comes along pretty well to make for a really great experience. Also, the fact that you can customize your character makes for some insane strategies. It is said in Team Fortress 2 that you can learn what kind of player a person is based on the outfit they're wearing, and this game ramps it up to 11, allowing you to create your own builds. To give you an idea of what all of this looks like in game, let's take the character Ivy. On the most basic level, she has the ability to fly, extra stamina, and the ability to pick up and drop her allies or enemies wherever she wants. This already deviates a lot from the playstyle of other characters, and it's good game design since it can make different characters feel fun to play, since you get to discover new mechanics every time you switch characters. But you can take her abilities a step further too with different builds. For example, you can make a build that maxes out her damage, turning her from a fast-moving annoyance to a bulldozer that can literally mow down anything in her path. Or you can go all in on the support aspects of her abilities, and instead become a quick ally who can support wherever necessary, as well as help out in disengaging when there are too many enemies nearby. And if you feel too overwhelmed by the huge amount of customization options available, you still don't have to worry, since there's a feature where different players can actually suggest good builds that focus on damage, support, and so on. This means that even players who haven't played any MOBA in their entire life can still pick up the game and run whatever build they want without needing to go through multiple matches where they get destroyed. All of this is possible because of just how much the developers are listening to the community on this. The whole point of releasing an alpha version is so that people can get a chance to play it and provide feedback on how to improve it so the final product can be the best it can possibly be. So, Valve went through the trouble of setting up an entire feedback forum where any player can join and provide their views on what can make the game better, bringing Valve developers in touch with the people they're trying to cater to. It's also limited to only the players who have access to the game, and every post you make there is private, which means that players can't influence each other. While Valve hasn't had the best reputation for being involved in the community, it does seem like they're making an effort to make this game the best it possibly can, and that includes filling it up with as many different ideas and gimmicks as possible. A lot of these have been borrowed from other games like the 6v6, but others like map verticality are completely new to this genre. To sum it up in simple words, map verticality is the ability to move up and down the map instead of just staying on the ground. Essentially, it means that you can get on rooftops, bridges, etc. Going back to the comparison I made between Smite 2 and Deadlock, a lot of the difference is because of the map verticality. Deadlock is also a lot more stylized than many other MOBA games. I mentioned before how often you don't get the best look at your character when playing a lot of MOBA games, mainly because of how the focus is primarily on mechanics and the view is often focused on providing as much information as possible. While that's not a bad way to do things, Deadlock's way of giving you an up and personal view of the fight works really well in differentiating it against its competition and gives a sense of style that has been missing from MOBAs as a whole. It also has an amazingly balanced roaming mechanic, where you can get permanent upgrades from breaking crates that line the streets of the map. But after 10 minutes, things get heated as roaming starts to give fewer points and fighting becomes necessary. Overall, the game feels extremely balanced to play and is a breath of fresh air against all of the sweat that you find in normal MOBAs. All of this keeps the game easy to learn for new players, but tough to master even for veterans, which is what is necessary to create good competition. But that doesn't mean that Deadlock is a perfect game. Ultimately, while the current size of 20-ish characters might seem like a lot at first glance, many MOBAs have character rosters of over 100, with League having 168 characters as of the time of writing. So, Valve has a lot of work left adding more characters that can shake up the meta, while still making them look as stylish and cool as possible. Another thing that they need to work on is the fact that multiple cheaters have already started appearing in the game, with some YouTubers even making videos about it.
Oh my gosh. He started shooting through the wall the first thing right now. Look at the curve! They're curving! It has cheaters already, that's cool.
Very blatant ones too.
Very blatant, do not care at all.
Almost all online games have to go through this issue, but Valve has an even more uphill task considering just how big of a problem Team Fortress 2 has with its cheaters. A lot of times, blatant cheating can take the fun out of an otherwise great game. So unless Valve can adapt to all of this quickly and come up with solutions, it could lead Deadlock into a precarious spot. There are also a lot of small issues that they need to fix before the game is fully launched, ranging from bug fixes to controller issues. Though even with all of that, I think that the future of Deadlock looks pretty good. It's just a great game, with great mechanics and an awesome team of developers working behind it. And overall, I'm excited to see where it goes from here. I also feel that this will definitely change how we play MOBAs in the long run. It is normal in the gaming industry to try and replicate what is working for other people. And so as the success of Deadlock continues to grow, it's going to cause other MOBAs made in the future to take inspiration from it. Whether it is by making the game extremely easy to get into, or experimenting with different kinds of maps, or so much more, it feels like Deadlock is starting to break completely new ground in the MOBA genre, and who knows? Maybe in a decade's worth of time, we'd have a completely new genre focused on games that take inspiration from Deadlock. Currently, it's projected to release in 2025, and honestly, even after so many letdowns like Suicide Squad, I think this is one game where I'm genuinely excited to play it. In fact, I already have over 100 hours played personally, and I'm excited to see where they take it next. Let's sum up everything we've talked about in this video. It's backed by a great company that has made some of the most influential games in all of gaming history. It's being worked on by a great team of developers who really care about what the fans want, has a really cool art design, is a perfect blend of everything that makes third-person shooters and MOBAs fun, has a low barrier of entry so just about everyone can play it, and overall is a great experience. The only challenge that I feasibly see them facing is keeping the updates as their player base grows, and making sure that we don't have a similar situation like League that's widely known for its toxic community. Otherwise, it feels like this game is all set to change MOBAs for good. If you like videos like this, then consider watching some of the other videos on our channel like this one about how Shroud's new game is going to change everything. And as always, thanks for watching.